Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending this very important conference and showing interest as well as serious concern about the situation in Nigeria. And well, in particular, thank you, the Intergroup on Freedom of Religion, for inviting us today. So, as my fellow speakers have just exposed to you, you can see that since more than 10 years, Nigeria has become a slaughterhouse. And here we are, faced with evidence for crimes against humanity, war crimes, and mounting evidence each day for the crime of genocide. But the question of bringing the perpetrators to justice has barely raised a whisper on the national level, but also among the international community. Now, of course, before the condemnation of an accused, and even before his first hearing in front of the International Criminal Court, the ICC, there are several steps which have to be completed according to the Rome Statute of the ICC. So firstly, there's the preliminary examination, and during this first step, the Office of the Prosecutor, the OTP, will examine the situation in the alleged geographic region. They will examine whether the court is competent considering such matters as sufficient evidence, jurisdiction, gravity, complementarity, but also the interests of justice. And it is very important to notice that during this first step, no suspect is clearly identified. The court is rather filtering, examining whether there is a reasonable basis to believe that international crimes have been committed. Secondly, there's the investigation, and during this second step, the prosecutor must collect and disclose both incriminating and exonerating evidence. And it is at the end of the investigation that the prosecutor can ask the judges to deliver warrants of arrest. And thirdly, there's the case and the trial. And it is only during this third step that the suspect, who then becomes the accused, will appear before court. And so he is considered innocent until proven guilty, while the burden of proof lies with the prosecutor. Nigeria is party to the Rome Statute of the ICC. And in fact, the ICC has been aware of the situation in Nigeria since 2010, when the OTP initiated a preliminary examination. The preliminary examination about the situation in Nigeria was made public on November 18th, 2010, and on December 11th, 2020, the former prosecutor announced its completion. She concluded there was a reasonable basis to believe that war crimes and crimes against humanity were committed in the course of the non-international armed conflict between the Nigerian security forces and Boko Haram. She also stated, I quote, "These allegations are sufficiently grave to warrant investigation by my office, both in quantitative and in qualitative terms." The legal criteria to open an investigation into the situation in Nigeria were thus met. And yet, it has been almost 2 years since any other steps have taken place. Now, what worries me at this point is that the judges have not taken the same amount of time in all the cases which are comparable to our situation. In the situation of Myanmar and Bangladesh, it took 4 months between the OTP's request and the Chamber's authorization to open an investigation. In the situation of Afghanistan, it took also 4 months. Same goes for Ivory Coast and Kenya, 4 months. The Philippines, it took 3 months, Burundi 5 months, and Georgia 3.5 months. Concerning the situation in Nigeria, it has been almost 12 years since the beginning of the preliminary examination. And it has been 1 year and 7 months precisely since the findings of the preliminary examination have been disclosed. How is this possible? Now, however, those procedural aspects are not the only astonishing factors concerning the situation in Nigeria before the ICC. Indeed, the charges do not mention the Fulani herdsmen as potential perpetrators, and crimes like genocide are not even on the books. It is a common development and an everyday occurrence across Nigeria to kill Christians. And meanwhile, offenders are not being prosecuted and the leaders are unresponsive. Christian leaders have accused Muhammadu Buhari, the Nigerian president, of favoring his co-religionists, as we just heard. And many even say that he wishes to make Nigeria an Islamic republic. According to an official report of the UK All-Party Parliamentary Group for International Freedom of Religion or Belief, I quote, "There was a consensus that the Nigerian government's response to conflict involving farmers and herders has been inadequate or ineffective, and that this has allowed violence to emerge and escalate." However, while the Office of the Prosecutor of the ICC mentions there's a reasonable basis to believe that war crimes and crimes against humanity have been committed, genocide is not mentioned by any means, and yet there are good reasons to believe that genocide is occurring. According to the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, which was ratified by various states and including Nigeria in 1948, and according to the Rome Statute, ratified by Nigeria in 2001, legal genocide is the deliberate and systematic destruction of a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. Now, of course, we know that genocide is the crime of crimes by international criminal law. And of course, therefore, courts take the burden of proof very seriously. And of course, there needs to be solid evidence, as there is a high standard to demonstrate that the committed acts constitute legal genocide. And of course, those difficulties are exacerbated when the criminal acts are still ongoing. But according to George H. Stanton, a former research professor in genocide studies at George Mason University in Fairfax County, Virginia, the process of genocide develops progressively in 10 stages. These stages do not always follow a linear progression. They may coexist. Most importantly, at each stage, preventive measures can be put into action even though one still might not be able to clearly, academically qualify the alleged crimes as genocide. Now, however, in our case, the situation is already pretty clear. Stanton's internationally recognized NGO Genocide Watch states that Nigeria already arrived at the 9th and the 10th stage of genocide, which are extermination and denial. And many NGOs and the former speakers also confirm this assumption. Again, about the international criminal law aspects, at the stage of the preliminary examination and the investigation, the Office of the Prosecutor of the ICC only has to evaluate whether there is a reasonable basis to believe that certain crimes have been committed. And it seems to be the least of the things to investigate over genocide under these circumstances. Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, as Nadia Murad, a Yazidi survivor of some of the atrocities committed by ISIS, once said, "When genocide is committed, it must be seen. People must not look at it with open eyes, not minimize its impact." We therefore ask you to spread the word about the situation in Nigeria and to advocate to protect the local Christian and other persecuted communities. It is time to raise awareness about the situation Christians are facing in Nigeria, and the ICC needs to move with urgency to deliver on its joint commitments to justice and translate these into concrete actions. There is no greater value that the European Parliament could provide than the rule of law, and it is under serious threat when those who commit the most serious crimes are not held accountable for that. Thank you very much for your attention.